Yo, what's up? Kyler here. Guess I'm gonna talk about my ISU summative presentation. So the play I chose to do was Glass Menagerie, obviously comparing that with A Raisin in the Sun. And the sort of theme I chose to base my essay around was the pursuit of the American dream and how it will ultimately fail, based on a few reasons that I'm obviously going to talk about later on in this presentation, but that you can still find happiness and success through your own personal American dream concept. Okay, so the thesis I chose to base this essay around is this. Because of the exertion of will to live up to this American dream, their misinterpretation of the American dream is warped through the low social class they exist in and end up not realizing that their own American dream was there the entire time. The three body paragraphs that I chose to break my thesis up into is this. The first one is this all results from the misreading of success they look up to, the reality of their low social class they have been born into, and the binding force that causes them to see past the things that lie within their grasp. So the criticism theory that I chose was actually the Marxist criticism theory because it best views these plays because they can easily compare to the power and the struggle and the social structures within each of the stories. So in the first body paragraph, this is the misreading and misinterpretation of the American dream that everyone looks up to. This is shown through the characters' actions and views in their goal to become successful or to achieve this American dream. So this is broken up into three things. The first thing is they compare themselves to other people. They thought power and money was the definition of the American dream. And throughout each story, many of the main characters believe that the American dream came from success rather than success coming from the achievement of the American dream. So in both texts, each of the authors show many characters, specifically Walter Younger and Tom Wingfield, comparing themselves to others much higher in social class and success, without actually realizing that the negative situations and flaws they're involved in and that they possess in their own lives. So now you're asking, oh, Kyler, how do these characters compare themselves to other people much higher than them in social class? Well, we can see in A Raisin in the Sun that Walter not only wants to become wealthier and improve his reputation in social class, but that he also wants equality with the white people, and in a way strives to become like them. He actually says, quote, "That white man is going to walk in that door able to write checks for more money than we ever had." So Walter states the fact that white people have money to throw away while their own family haven't even got as much money as they hold leisurely. Walter actually brings this up because he knows that they have it better, and he hates the fact that they have it worse, which motivates him to become just as equal, if not superior, to the white people. Similarly, in The Glass Menagerie, we can see that Tom is sick of the warehouse, and he compares himself to most other young men who work elsewhere, just hinting at that jealousy, just like Walter. Not only did they compare themselves to the unknown of others, they specifically thought that money, power, and social class was the true definition of the American dream. Walter invests in this liquor store that he believes would give him money and power, which was actually his only desire up until the end in the story. He got greedy with the money that was given to him and ended up losing it all, showing that money and power cannot give you the happiness that the American dream shows that it can offer. In comparison, William writes in Amanda's line, and I quote, "Both these facts are very illuminating. Those are the sort of things that a mother should know concerning any young man who comes to call on her daughter." So, Amanda states that she's quite interested about the work of this gentleman caller and immediately believes that Laura marrying him would increase the social reputation of the family. The whole reason of this date that Amanda sets up was to have Laura depend on someone else for care, but the high expectations of Amanda ended up showing her the wrong meaning of the American dream, and her pursuit of it ultimately failed because of it. So the last point of the misinterpretation of the American dream is that throughout each story, many of the main characters believe that the American dream came from success rather than success coming from the American dream. So I believe the true American dream is something based on personal success rather than other people's views or society's views on success. Walter at first views other people's wealth as unfair because of his disadvantage due to discrimination and race and low social class, as a matter of fact. And though that may be true, he's focusing his goals to one-up other people's successes rather than motivating himself to accomplish his successes that will benefit him and his family. And here's a quote from Walter. "You tired, ain't you? You tired of everything. Me, the boy, the way we live, this beat-up hole, everything." So Walter blames everything on this beat-up hole they live in, and instead of focusing to succeed in bringing his family happiness, he focuses only on becoming wealthy, saying it's for the betterment of his family. We can also see in Glass Menagerie that Amanda also bases her view on success from other people's view on success when she insists on Laura marrying and starting a life of her own because she views it as society telling her that this is the only way of achieving success with her daughter. This misinterpretation of the American dream leads to the views of the characters to become disoriented, resulting in decisions that if they could have avoided it, would have been the better option. So the second point I had was the reality of being in such a low class in society gives the characters a bigger obstacle to overcome to achieve this American dream because they do deal with struggles that other classes wouldn't face. So the 3 points I had for this was that they do struggle with financial situations. They're looked down on in society, and that because they have so many more challenges to face, it seems to interrupt that progress of achieving this American dream. Clearly, we can see this in A Raisin in the Sun, as it shows that their dependence on working immensely and their desire they have to become wealthy. Ruth actually says, and I quote, "I got to go in, we need the money," clearly stating that they aren't financially stable. And because of this, the problem is carried out throughout the rest of the play, affecting the actions, thoughts, decisions of each character to the end. And also because of this struggle, the goal of becoming wealthy is prominent, making this American dream warped in their view, thus even harder to achieve. So comparatively, in the Glass Menagerie, the struggle of money is evident because of the women's dependence on Tom's ability to provide for them. The whole story is actually revolved around Laura's dependence because she is without the job, and Amanda actually says to Tom that he cannot leave them, making his own American dream stalled in the process. So probably the most important element of this class system affecting them is how they are looked down on in society. Clearly, many examples of racism and discrimination are found in A Raisin in the Sun. For example, the chair of a community council tries to bribe them out of the house, perhaps knowing of their financial struggles, and though they refuse, they are now targeted and hated among the more privileged white people in that neighborhood. Not only is the success they try and achieve now affected not only by their own goals, but other people play a part in their lives. As well, characters in the Glass Menagerie are looked down on from others in society, making their American dream ultimately torn apart. Not only does Laura explain her struggles in high school, being a factor in her social life and a reason for her being shy, Tom says, and I quote, "He was the only one at the warehouse with whom I was on friendly terms." This is because he was looked down on because of where he was positioned in terms of social class. This halts the process of achieving the American dream because he cannot find happiness at home with his family or at the warehouse with his co-workers. So the last point of this point which, if you forgot, was the reality of their social class not helping them, is the point that the American dream slows down in each story because of different challenges faced that seems to interrupt that progress. So not only did the youngers face a financial struggle, they faced other problems such as an unexpected baby, university tuition, and most obvious, race and discrimination because they were colored. Likewise, Williams writes in the same manner how the Wingfields face other challenges that stall the progression of them achieving the American dream. For example, when Amanda states to Laura, $50 tuition, all of our plans, my hopes and ambition for you, just gone up the spout. Just gone up the spout like that. So the challenges experienced by both stories show, especially in the lower class, how worrying about other problems leads you to focus on them instead of the main goal of the American dream. And after facing these trials continuously, time after again, time eventually thins out to a point where you realize you missed the whole journey and there isn't any left. So my last main point was that people search for the type of success that they think will bring them happiness when in reality their happiness was there the entire time. And then the 3 points, sub-points actually, I have for these was that they focused on materialistic possessions that eventually, give way. The second sub-point is they looked past important things, such as family, and the third thing is finding happiness in the journey rather than the destination. So materialistic possessions are what society tends to base their success on, and both stories clearly show this way of thinking. In A Raisin in the Sun, Hansberry shows that Walter's clear objective in life is to make money, saying, quote, "Do you know what this money means to me? Do you know what this money can do for us?" His only intentions are focused so much on the money, and when he eventually loses it all, he sees no meaning of trying anymore, whereas the family wasn't affected nearly as much because they didn't rely on the check to give them happiness. Just like Tom in The Glass Menagerie, he fails to realize that his dependence on alcohol is just a coping mechanism with his life that will eventually mean nothing later on. So the second subpoint I had for this was the main characters in each of the stories specifically look past the important things. Walter says, and I quote, "This ain't no fly-by-night proposition, baby. I mean, we figured it out, me, Willie, and Bobo." So Walter already has this plan for the future, and though that may be wise, he is looking past what the family really needs at this time, which is a loving husband who can provide for the family, which Walter is certainly capable of doing. The same as with Tom. He's focused on just leaving the house every day instead of taking care of his family, and we can see this when Amanda states, and I quote, "But Tom, you go to the movies entirely too much." So not only is Tom lying about actually going to the movies, which we can later read on in the story, his first priority, which is taking care of the family, should be ahead of him leaving them to fend for themselves. So last but not least, happiness was also a goal each of the characters strive for in both stories, though thought that it can only be reached through the success they plan to acquire rather than the journey they experience through it all. They pictured success at the end of the road in each story. Walter imagined himself as equal in power and money to the white people that he didn't realize until the end of the story that his happiness was taking on the struggles with the help of his family instead of it all by himself. On the other hand, Tom states in the final scenes of the play, and I quote, "I would have stopped, but I was pursued by something." So here he was clearly attracted to something that he thought would benefit himself at the end, but ended up ruining his journey, which included his relationship with his family, and ended up not being able to find happiness in the end. So though both stories did have different endings, the whole time the protagonist misinterpreted what the American dream really was. They based what they thought it was off of what society thought it was, instead of basing the American dream off of their own successes and their own views on what it should be. The Youngers realized this at the end and concluded that they found happiness and their own version of the American dream through family, while the Wingfields eventually ruined their family because they could not get past the fact that society's American dream was unattainable and could not resort to living out their own American dream. Though society's American dream is near impossible to achieve, finding meaningful success and happiness in your own life will ultimately lead you to attain your own American dream.